بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لله الحمد. هذا هو النشاط العاشر لنا هنا في باكستان ضد هذا النظام البعثي المستبد، ويوم نشارك إخواننا حول العالم في نشاط اليوم العالمي لأطفال سوريا الذين قتلهم النظام البعثي الفاسد وهو أعوانه وأذناب نظامه. هنا نضيء الشموع وشمعة لأطفالنا في سوريا.
This led to a series of peaceful demonstrations calling for the children's
Pakistan with you. نعم. Pakistan with you. باكستان معكم. أطفالنا في سوريا لن ننساكم.
Killing 5 protesters and fueling the people's rage. A week later, more than 24 protesters were killed in Dara by Assad snipers from the security forces. As always, a full media blackout was imposed by the Syrian regime. Demonstrations followed in Damascus, Banyas, Homs, Hama, Latakia, Jibla, Kamashli and Hasaka. Protesters marched again in several cities for greater political freedom. Assad's security forces continued to shoot unarmed civilians, chanting for freedom and democracy. Live ammunition was used to disperse peaceful rallies on the outskirts of the capital, Damascus. The calls of freedom began to fill the Syrian streets in various cities and regions, with the same slogan used by Dara's children: "People want to topple the regime." The Assad regime began to kill a new number of peaceful demonstrators each day. The army continued to set up roadblocks outside the towns and suburbs where there were the biggest protests, and banned international journalists and media from going to the demonstrations. The government denied responsibility for the violence, saying that armed groups had fired on its security forces and protesters. Over the last 4 months, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime and his security forces, the army and private militia, have been responsible for at least 2,000 killings, 15,000 injuries caused to men, women and children, and 15,000 arbitrary detentions. Despite initial promises of reform, al-Assad shows no signs of relenting his suppression of the opposition. Whole cities such as Dara, Homs, Hama, Banyas and surrounding areas remain under siege, with little or no access to water, electricity, communication or medical supplies. The Syrian regime launched its army on its own people. The army began to enter and bomb the Syrian cities, preventing food, water and babies' formula, and imposing the siege on the cities and arresting men, women, the elderly and children. The security services have been arbitrarily detaining hundreds of protesters in Dara, Damascus, Duma, Al-Tal, Homs and Banyas, and subjecting many to torture.
So we have also religious freedom. We need it as a human being.
Absolutely,
Yeah, it's basic human rights. And you have to get
activists and
That's why
protesters,
the uprising is coming now.
lawyers, journalists, writers.
So how many people have been killed so far?
Today only about 130 people killed in Hama. And
The protests
Very sad.
were singled out for a
Earlier they were saying, 1,000 people, and now it must be about 2,000.
now it's about more than
in
3,000.
some areas. Dara is an
But
outstanding example.
media is not allowed to
Detentions were completely
cover everything in Syria.
In early May, the government seemed to have gained the upper hand, but the protests died again. By the internet activists, especially the sharing online of a video that showed the body of a 13-year-old boy, Hamza Ali Al-Khatib, went with his family on a peaceful march.
أخونا بالله عبد الرزاق العطيش أحد أنشط الثوار هنا في باكستان. ثورة بإذن الله.